Welcome everybody. Good morning. Welcome to the Development Control meeting for June here at Lake District National Park Authority. I'll start with the usual introductions for those that might not have been here or those watching us live on YouTube. My name is Mark Kidd. I'm chair of the committee. And sitting to my right is Andrew Smith, Head of Development Management. To Andrew's right is Kevin Richards, who's the Planning Manager here. And to Kevin's right is Phil Nichols, who will be presenting one of the planning applications in front of us today. So our first item on the agenda is apologies for those members that can't be here, and I'll ask Helen. I think we just have one.
I don't think we've received any apologies.
So Andy's not here, but he's not sent apologies, so he might turn up. Okay. So just the one. And members, the minutes. Can we approve the minutes from the last meeting back in April?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'll sign those off just now. So just a couple of announcements before we get into the meeting properly. First of all, the fire alarm. We're not expecting a fire alarm today. So if you do hear something that sounds like an alarm, please treat it as a real thing. And the procedure is to leave via these doors to my left. One of the members will open them in case of the alarm going off. And then we all leave the building and walk around the building this way clockwise and assemble out in the car park out front, if that was ever to happen. Secondly, just to inform everyone, the meeting is live streamed. There's a camera there and there's an audio recording, and that's transmitted live on YouTube, and it stays on YouTube as a recording of what's happened today in the meeting. And lastly, if you've got a device or a mobile phone, if you could switch it on to silent, please, that'd be fantastic. Next item on the agenda, declarations of interest. Members, do you have any declarations of interest of anything on the agenda today or any of the planning applications? Anyone? I have not a declaration of interest, but just to note that item number 7, the one in Staveley, the Poplars, that's my parish council. I am still chair of the parish council there. However, I don't take part in any of the planning discussions there, apart from just noting what the results are. So I can just carry on in that item because I don't actually have an interest in it. Next item on the agenda is questions. So questions to the committee under Standing Order 14 subsection 2. So these are of a general nature about what the committee does. We don't have any of those questions today. The next item on the agenda is public participation of a general nature again, and we don't have any public participation, but we do have public speaking on the individual planning applications that we're going to consider very soon. So next item is site inspections. So I'm going to ask Andrew if he's got any site inspections he would like to propose for us.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've got one which I'd recommend, which is a pre-application visit to the Bellsfield Hotel in Bowness to look at potential scheme for a range of extensions and alterations to the accommodation there. Ordinarily, we'd do that on the Wednesday following this meeting, that's the 10th of June, but I'm mindful that several members are away that day. So if it's all right with you, Chair, maybe if at the end of the meeting, after the meeting's closed, if we just stop back and just have a look at potential dates for that, please.
Yeah, so first I'll just ask members, are you okay having that site visit into Bowness? And after the meeting, we'll try and thrash out a date that we're all mostly able to go to. Okay. That's great. The members, do you want to propose any site visits? Anything? Any planning applications? Jim?
My only thought, Mark, is if we're in Bowness, whether there is anything else worthy of looking at, even if it's not directly related to an immediate planning application.
Because sometimes we do double up. We do 2 site visits when we're all together, if we're in the area. Is there anything?
If you can leave that with me, I'll have a look and we'll see what we've got on the books. Either current applications likely to come to before committee or pending. Yeah.
Or even potentially historic ones that we've had a good discussion on.
Yeah, a bit of training. Okay. Right, so we're into our planning applications now. So we normally take our planning applications in the order that they're presented on the agenda, and we normally do the ones with public speaking first. And in this case today, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so it's just a straight starting with number 1. So our first application before us that Phil's going to tell us all about is at Derwent Service Station, Penrith Road in Keswick.
Thank you, Chair. So planning permission is sought to make a number of alterations and extensions to the service station on Penrith Road in Keswick. The application is for committee because recommendation of approval is contrary to the views of representations received. There are 2 updates to the report that before members. Firstly, we've had a clarification from the Environmental Health Officer in terms of their views. They are not raising any objections to the application subject to a condition securing the lighting operational hours. That condition is already set out in the report, so that's compliant with the recommendation of the Environmental Health Officer. The second update is a recommendation of a further condition on the application. This relates to the implementation of the fencing, acoustic fencing around the new parking area. We are recommending a condition that requires the installation of that fencing prior to the first use of the car park, primarily from a neighbouring amenity point of view. As it stands, we only have landscaping condition that wouldn't secure its implementation prior to its use. So that's why we're recommending an additional condition on the fencing to be installed. So moving on to the application itself. The site is located on the eastern approach into Keswick on Penrith Road. It's outlined in red here. There are a number of neighbouring properties. Primarily, the closest is the Struggle, which is indicated on the map as Yoden. Actually, it's changed its name. The other side of the road is Tollbar Cottage, and then the properties on Latrick Close, in particular 84, are those closest neighbouring properties. This shows the existing site plan on the site. The proposals are to demolish an existing garage in the corner and convert an area of unused grassland into parking, together with an extension onto the main shop area and other alterations within the existing site plan. So proposed site plan shows those changes: the new parking area in the top left corner following the demolition of the garage, the extension to the building, which will form a new storage building for the retail use, and other alterations within the confines, in particular some change to the petroleum pipes. As originally submitted, there was a jet wash area proposed in this parking area at the top left. That was removed because of concerns about noise on the neighbouring properties. The existing jet wash area will be retained in the kind of bottom right hand corner. Existing elevations and proposed elevations. So existing elevations show the garage building here. So that's the street level view. That would be demolished and the new storage extension added to the existing building. So moving on to some photos, the primary views from Penrith Road itself, looking across the forecourt of the petrol station. Note the closest neighbouring property here, the Struggle, already has a very close relationship with the activity associated with the petrol station. Looking at the other direction, the main entrance into the petrol station is through this route. Cars are directed either through the forecourt or around the back of the building and exit along this axis.
Fair to say that the sound in this room is very full.
Try and move that closer. Is that any better?
Thanks.
There is a public right of way running back onto the map. Public right of way runs along an alleyway here between Latrick Close and the filling station. So a couple of photos from that route looking back towards the area that will be turned into the parking area. On the left hand side of the photo is the garage that will be demolished. Again, looking back towards the rear elevation of the filling station there. Final photo from the alleyway shows the relationship between Latrick Close and the proposed parking area, which will be on the left hand side of this photo here. The proposed fencing would be behind the stone wall. There'd be a buffer of landscaping, and then fencing would be constructed along this boundary. Moving into the forecourt itself, the central building there is the garage building that will be demolished, and that shows the relationship between the closest neighbouring property and the forecourt area. So in summary, the primary considerations are whether the alterations to the forecourt and building are acceptable from a design and appearance point of view, and whether or not the alterations would have an acceptable impact on the closest neighbouring properties. The physical changes are all seen in the context of the existing operations within the service station. They're all considered to be designed and landscaped appropriately. We're recommending a condition that brings forward the landscaping around the parking area, together with, as I've mentioned before, the installation of fencing along those boundaries. We consider, therefore, that the proposals are acceptable. They would not have an unacceptable impact on the amenity of the neighbouring properties and are designed appropriately for the context of that site. I therefore recommend the application be approved, subject to conditions laid out in the report, in addition to the mentioned condition added about fencing around that parking area as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Can I just check you can hear okay at the back? Is that any better, the sound? Oh, right. Maybe we'll just get the microphone a bit closer, because sometimes we'll check again after. Thanks, Phil. Members, so this part of the meeting is where members of the committee can ask questions of the officers, and then we go to our public speaking, and then we have a discussion afterwards among the committee about what their thoughts are. Members, do you have any questions for Phil or the officers? Rick?
Yeah, just a question. Is there any controls over the operation of the site at present?
No, so there's no controls from a planning perspective. Whether or not licensing would get involved in terms of our opening hours, but no, there's no controls over the site, so it's that they can open for as long as they choose to.
Jenny?
Yeah, I was just wondering about the end parking place, number 12. Will that leave enough room for vehicles going around the back, including tankers? Because I see that that's a tanker standing enter
So yeah, we've asked that question. We have been provided with a tracking plan that shows that tankers can enter the site around the back of the building and exit the site appropriately without coming into conflict with parked vehicles. The local highway authority have considered the movements through into and out of the site and are satisfied that that is acceptable.
Jim?
Not too obvious a question, but the fencing will also block headlights, will it? Because as well as the noise, I'm conscious that cars moving around could shine the lights into the houses, so the fencing will be solid enough to stop lights as well.
Yeah, it would be, and it's to be a height of 2 meters as well, so it would be a height that would be sufficient to block anything over the top as well.
Okay.
Any other questions? Jackie?
Just with the flood risk, has that been mitigated? It's not going to, because of all the hard standing running off into the other properties?
Yeah, so we've considered its impact on flood risk. We're satisfied that because the changes are fairly small scale, that they wouldn't result in an adverse impact in terms of flood risks of the site.
Any other questions? Just one from me, Phil. There's always been a close relationship between the residential building and the petrol station forecourt. And that includes the petrol vent pipes that come off the tank. There's going to be a slight change to that. Would you be able to show on the plan where the new or the proposed pipes would be?
So that photo shows the relationship at the moment. It's probably best indicated on the existing and proposed. So at the moment they are set further away, but there's no hard boundary there. The proposals would bring it slightly closer, but proposing a wall along that elevation. So we felt that the minor changes and the introduction of a wall along that elevation would be sufficient to not lead to any.
So it looks like a few meters in towards that fence.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, thank you. Right, if there's no more questions, we'll go to our public speaking. We have Ms. Smith. If you could please come and take a seat. I'll just explain the public speaking procedure for those who might not have been to one of these meetings before. So all public speakers have 5 minutes to speak and address the committee. After, if you go over the 5 minutes, we'll kind of very politely let you know when to stop. And if you can just stay in your seat afterwards in case there's any questions from the members. And when you're ready to go, if you press the microphone button on the microphone. So whenever you're ready.
Hi, thank you. This is a modest proposal. James Hall and Co are seeking permission for a ground floor extension to the side of the existing unit. The extension will provide additional stockroom space to better serve the existing retail use. The scheme also includes the demolition of an existing store, originally a garage, along with external works, including resurfacing and additional parking spaces. The original submission comprised the relocation of the jet wash from one side of the site to the other. This has since been removed from the proposal and now remains in situ. The proposal supports the continued and efficient operation of an established service facility. Oh,
sorry, could you just
Let me
pause
try.
the speaking for a second? Sorry to interrupt. Would you be able to just hold it slightly closer? That's great.
no problem. The proposal supports the continued and efficient operation of an established service facility. It does not introduce a new use or intensify the use beyond what is already expected at a petrol filling station or any significant change in how the site functions. In terms of amenity, Environmental Health has reviewed the application and raised no objection. They confirmed that there will be no changes that would materially affect noise emissions from the site. In respect of lighting, the submitted details demonstrate low light spill with levels at the nearest residential property measured at approximately 2.5 lux. This is considered acceptable, subject to a condition requiring lighting to be switched off at 11 in the evening. The store closes at 10, so it's likely that that lighting would only be needed for about 15 minutes anyway. The proposal is therefore considered to have no unacceptable impact on neighbouring residential amenity. From a design and visual perspective, the extension is modest in scale and sits comfortably alongside the existing building. The associated external works are typical of this type of facility. Overall, the development would not result in any harmful visual impact on the surrounding area. Importantly, the proposal represents a small-scale investment in an existing petrol filling station, helping to ensure its continued viability and functionality for residents and visitors. In summary, the application is policy compliant. It supports an existing use, raises no technical objections, and can be appropriately controlled through conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Members, any questions? No questions. Thank you very much. If I could ask you to return to your seat. Okay, members, at this part of the item, this is our discussion part, so we can make comments, we can make proposals, and I'm always looking for somebody to start us off. Chris, you raised your hand.
So they never got an auction. I wasn't planning to sign us up, but in that case, I will. I'll move to accept the officer's recommendation.
Okay, sure. Rick.
Yeah, in terms of the conditions, that you say that there's no control over the opening hours. The suggestion is that the shop shuts at 10. The external lighting, you want switched off at 11 o'clock at night because of the harm. During the winter months, it's been dark since, say, 5 o'clock. So are we expecting 6 hours of harm because of the lighting? Why suddenly at 11 o'clock does it become harmful when for the 6 hours previous to that during the winter months it's been switched on?
I think it's born out of the response from Environmental Health Officer, but my understanding is it's the perception of lighting. So once you get later into an evening, you would expect a degree of darkness. You go to sleep, those kind of impacts, whereas earlier on in the evening, there's an expectation that there still will be activity, lights, movements, and those, therefore, it's reasonable to turn it off in those later hours.
Just strikes me that the new parking and the lighting would be harmful to residential. I mean, is it necessary for the parking to be lit?
Yeah, I mean, there is a necessity to have the parking area lit from a health and safety perspective. We're satisfied that it's been lit adequately for the purpose. So yeah, I mean, in assessing it, we've concluded it's an acceptable impact. There will be a change, but that's acceptable in the context of that site and what those properties already experience from that use.
And the lights the lights lighting the car park are the ones shown in the downlighting LEDs.
Yeah, correct.
Top there. Okay, members, we have a proposal. Anyone else wish to make comments? Jim?
I'm happy to second Chris's proposal.
Okay. Anyone else before we go to a vote? Okay, so we have a proposal from Chris, seconded by Jim, that we grant planning permission as per officer's report, subject to an additional condition requiring the acoustic fencing to be installed prior to use. All those in favour? All those against?
It's approved, 8.
Okay, thank you very much, members. That one is approved. So we'll move on to our next application. So our next application is number 2 on the schedule, and that is a grazing field at Portinscale. Change of use.
Thank you, Chair. So this application seeks retrospective planning permission to allow the existing agricultural use field to be used as by the archery club as a recreational use of that field. In addition to the change of use, there have been works to install hard-standing siting of containers and toilets within the field itself. There are 3 updates to the report before members. Firstly, the Environment Agency have issued a further response removing their objection following the provision of an acceptable flood risk assessment. Secondly, we've had 1 additional letter of support for the proposals. This doesn't raise any further comments that haven't been already outlined in the report. The third update is the Keswick Town Council have provided a response to the application. I'm summarising it, but their response has been provided whilst it's outside the town boundary. It is the view of Keswick Town Council that they wanted to provide a response to the application. They say that although the application is outside the town boundary, it is the Keswick Archery Club, and they consider the application should be supported. The efforts have been made by the Archery Club in finding a suitable location are well documented. Then their view, when you visit the remote location and see the flat green open meadow off the beaten track, it is well screened by mature trees, and you can immediately see why they prepared, why the site is acceptable. It is an area that affects no one, and it allows it to be continued to be grazed as open pasture land when not in use. There are only concerns surrounding the installation on siting of the containers in the open countryside has been addressed by additional visualisations and screening provided by the applicant. In their view, as Keswick has been recently classified as a deprived area in provision of leisure facilities outside the mainstream sports, this initiative should be welcomed and encouraged. They provide a response that says that the parks in Keswick are unsuitable for the club, as trustees would not allow the club to set up in their base. They therefore consider the application should be supported. So the application site is situated between Keswick and Braithwaite, north of Portinscale, close to the old railway line. The field itself is currently used as agricultural. The proposals would be to allow a recreational use of that field in addition to the agricultural use already in existence. The closest public rights of way to the application site run across Hodgson Howe and to the south, and a footpath that runs below Howe Farm to the east. There's a caravan park, touring caravan park situated to the south. Satellite imagery gives a view of the field itself and the works that have been undertaken. So on the far left-hand side of the field, a hard standing has been laid down, which is used for parking associated with it. Any participants would drive up the track and park vehicles in the area of hard standing. The shipping containers have been sited to the south west corner of the site, and the field that extends out eastwards is used for setting out the targets used in practicing and competitions that are held by the archery club. Use photos of the site itself. Photo looks across the area of hard standing towards the containers, which is shown in the corner site here, together with a various amount paraphernalia associated with it, so tables, chairs, and other pieces of equipment. Moving further into sites, the containers are shown in that corner, tucked close to the boundary of the field itself. Again, a photo looking back towards those pieces of equipment. Photo gives a representation of how the field is set out when in use. So targets would be laid out within the field and participants would park in the hard standing as shown on the left hand side and would use the area for the recreational use. Try and give an indication of some of the distant views, but possible views from rights of way. So the footpaths down to the south across Hodgson Howe, glimpses of the containers are possible through the tree line, albeit not prominent. And as you get closer down, again, glimpses through those trees. Moving to the east, so the public rights of way that run down from Howe Close Farm, again, the caravan and containers are visible through those trees, but again at distant views. And again, that's obviously a broader view. As you get further away, those impacts are negligible, I would say. The applicant has asked that we include some more recent photos that they will refer to in their presentation. The indication there is the additional screening and painting of the containers that further screens it from views. Running through those photos that, as I say, the applicant might talk more to. So in summary, there are three main issues that we've identified through the assessment of the application. Firstly is the principal development. The application is situated in the open countryside. The Policy 02 spatial strategy indicates that new recreational uses such as this in an open countryside location are only acceptable where there is an essential need demonstrated. We have, in our assessment, not found an essential need for the use of this field. So in principle, we find conflict with the spatial strategy and resulting in development in the open countryside that is not policy compliant. The second issue is the visual landscape impact. Views towards the site are possible. The equipment and containers, when seen, would have, in my view, have an adverse impact on the character of that area, and therefore conflicting with the approach to the character and appearance. The final issue is the site is located in flood zone 3B, functional floodplain. In assessing the impacts, we've not identified that an essential need has been demonstrated for that use in that flood zone. So the sequential test in assessing it has therefore been failed. For those three reasons, we are recommending refusal on the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Members, any questions for Phil? Rick?
In terms of the news, Phil, are we considering it as under the news classes ordered as recreational use? So it could be any recreational use of that field. And the second question would be, is there any detail regarding the levels of use and in frequency of use? Like, is it once a week, every day?
So dealing with the second point first, we've not been provided with a schedule of events or activity levels, so we're not aware of how regular the activities are, so we have to consider it as the option that they could use it very frequently. In terms of that use, we it is a recreational use, so we would have to consider any other uses. If we were considering, we could try and condition it, but it's unlikely you would want to condition just for archery. So yes, it would be any recreational use of that field would be what we would be permitting.
I think if you were minded to approve, it would have to think of conditions if you wanted to restrict the use. Any other questions, Jenny?
Yeah, I get that it's a valuable resource for leisure facilities and things like that, but has another site been determined for them? And another one is following on to what Rick said about, you know, people on the footpath and what have you, would they be walking by and think, oh, picnic area, and then potential for leaving rubbish?
We haven't dealt with any other applications for the club or on alternative sites. I don't think there is a risk in terms of public use of that site. The rights of way, as shown on the map, are distant. You can walk across Hodge and Howe, but again, access into that field is fairly limited. So I think the risk of any members of the public using those facilities are low.
We do have a representative of the Archers speaking, so maybe I'll ask questions about alternative sites and of the frequency of use as well, potentially. I'll go Phil and then Jim.
Thank you, Jim. I understand that you said that leisure and healthy-based activities are not deemed essential. I'm just trying to remember what your exact words were, but it does strike me that it might be fair to say that no activity that's promoting health, well-being and community is absolutely imperative. But unfortunately, we all know the long-term effects of lack of inactivity, lack of social cohesion, lack of community. So could you just unpack the fact that it's not essential that people take part in outdoor activities like this?
Yes, that's not quite what I said. It's referring to
Thank you. That's right. You don't
policy 02, which is the spatial strategy, so open countryside location. The policy says there needs to, for any development to be sited in an open countryside location, there needs to be an essential need demonstrated. So an agricultural worker's dwelling needs to be in an open countryside location because it needs to be near the farm. So it's that link to an essential rural location that this application has failed to demonstrate.
So we can't say that outdoor activity is essential, but it's up to us to decide whether or not we think it's important.
To comply with that wording, that policy, you'd have to show that the need for the use is essential to be in a rural area. So it tends to refer to things like agricultural use, where it needs to be out in a field, out in the country, sort of thing. Jim.
Thank you. 3 questions. Maybe take them each in turn, and I'm casting my mind back to how we would talk about this if it wasn't already in place and we were looking at it as a new application. First of all, the hard standing. We've debated quite a lot of times about car parks and what would be acceptable surfaces for putting cars onto spaces of green land. What hard standing have they used, and what would we traditionally recommend in those sort of circumstances if someone came to us an application to create a small car park, which is effectively that, in my mind, is what that is?
So were we to be in a position where we accepted the principle of development and we considered that some works associated with it were needed, then yes, we could look at it and say, well, a hard standing is appropriate. In that location, you'd have to take a view as to the acceptability. Some kind of stone chippings may be more recessive in colour, something darker. Whether or not there would be some kind of grasscrete approach, you'd have to look at the details were you to get to that position.
I'm just thinking historically we've talked about certain types of matting, haven't we, which have allowed the grass to grow through. So actually when it's not in use, it doesn't look like hard standing. So that was my first thought. Second one, I think the risk is mentioned about this being repeatable. So we're setting a precedent. how significant is that risk that if we made a decision here, that this could pop up repeatedly across the lakes and this could be used as the precedent that says, well, it happened there, so why shouldn't we be able to do it elsewhere? Is that a serious risk of likely to happen?
It's hard to know ultimately, but the fact is this is an open agricultural field in the open countryside on the edge of close to a large settlement, and it's conceivable that recreational groups, sports groups would look for similar fields in similar circumstances. So it would be highly repeatable circumstances, and you'd have to consider whether or not approving this, if you were to be minded to, would make it hard to resist other similar applications in similar circumstances.
The difficulty I've got, if a future case went to an inspector on appeal, if we refused it, would the inspector likely quote this case back as saying, well, because you agreed it in Keswick, it's fine in Coniston? I'm just worried we're setting a precedent that could be used against, could undermine our policies under it. That's where my head is.
So every application on its merits.
Yeah.
Obviously, but consistency of decision making is capable of being a material consideration. As Phil says, there are lots of fields in the open countryside.
So it's a material risk in my mind.
So, are the circumstances around it's an agricultural field in the open countryside as defined by policy repeatable? Well, yes, because there are lots of them. How likely is it to happen? We don't know. Is it likely that a sports group is going to pop up for every single field in the Lake District? No, it's not. If we get other applications, ultimately we have to determine them all on their merits based on the specific circumstances that are expressed in those cases.
Okay. So final question. Did you consider a condition that said if the field ceased to be used by the archery club, that it was actually returned back to agricultural use? The gist I've got is that sometimes sheep will graze that grass, but that the field would be totally back to its original use. Did you consider a condition on that?
I think if you were to be minded that it's acceptable, then you would have to consider what conditions you'd want to put in place to secure any future operations. So it would be something to consider if you were minded to give one of approval.
I just want to check it's feasible.
So Phil and the team haven't put any suggested conditions because the recommendation is refusal. However, if members were minded to approve, you would possibly want to consider what conditions you may want to impose on that.
Thank you. And I'm just exploring options before we go on to our discussion. I'm very interested to hear before.
Definitely. Any other questions of the officers before we go to public speaking? No. Okay, so we have two public speakers. We've got Mr. Dawson and Ms. Little, and you're sharing the time between each other. So I'll just run by the procedure again. It's 5 minutes between you. How you want to split that up is up to you guys. We'll run the timer. When the timer counts down, if you're still speaking, we'll stop you, but in a nice way. So whenever you're ready, if you just press the button.
Hello, I'm here as the Town Clerk of Keswick Town Council, as well as the Chief Executive Officer of Fitzpark and Hope Park Trusts in Keswick. Keswick Town Council has been advocating on behalf of the Archery Club since they were given notice by Keswick Rugby Club and have helped them through their search for a new site. They have approached us both previously a number of years ago and recently to inquire as to whether there was space available to use within the parks in Keswick. Our main concern is the requirement that for the level of archery at which Keswick Archery Club works requires a minimum safe working distance of 150 yards to ensure that their insurance through their governing body Archery GB is valid. Hope Park is too small and has too many attractions and tourists visiting to safely accommodating the needs of the club. Townsfield, also known as the Brigham Field, is a registered village green, so in theory would be a suitable space. However, the containers which the Archery Club are using could not be accommodated on the site, nor is there suitable parking nearby. Fitz Park, while the largest park in Keswick at 28 acres, has a number of sports clubs which have already have leases signed and agreed within the park, which takes up the vast majority of the space. There's the football club, cricket club, athletics club, bowling club, tennis club, croquet club there, as well as a very busy children's play area already placed within the boundaries of Fitz Park. The park is also used a lot by dog walkers with their dogs running free, and also families out enjoying themselves by the river. There simply is not the space to accommodate the archery club and the containers with all their equipment on a level, safe space there. I would therefore ask the committee to reconsider whether the club has failed to satisfy the exceptional requirements of Policy 2 Spatial Strategy, given the numerous attempts they have made to remain within Keswick. However, a suitable space is simply not available to them there.
Good morning. Firstly, I'd like to apologise on behalf of Keswick Abled and Disabled Archers regarding the use and work carried out on the field without the change of use. We were given full permission by the landowner and generally believe we were acting appropriately. I will be addressing the main issues raised within the planning report. As you've said, now that after our second submission of our flood risk assessment, there's no more objections. And I'd like to quote Annex 3 of the National Planning Policy, stating that the outdoor space and recreational developments are classed as water compliant and don't require a sequential test. We've had no objections from the Highway Agency, and we've calculated that the field is going to be used for 340 hours per year, which is just 3%. The impact of vehicles, access and egressing during that 3% will be minimal at best, as families and members car share. Not every member shoots every day. Principle of development is, as Vivian's outlined, we can't use the parks, and evidence has been submitted showing that other potential spaces that meet the archery GB safety standards in the Keswick area were explored, but applications were subsequently denied as those spaces were used for other events that were not financially viable. Moving to the field was our last resort. This wasn't acknowledged within the report. The archery GB safety requirements for overshoot distance and the fact we have tried other potential spaces within Keswick gives reasonable justification for the essential use, which would not set a precedent for other potential change of use applications in the area. Appearance, containers and portaloos are now painted Brunswick green and cannot be seen, as you've seen in the photos. The hard standing has begun to grass over, and this will shorten blending with the field, which is always our intention. We've planted trees from the Woodland Trust, and to increase biodiversity, the access is via private roads. Whilst the field is being used for archery and the targets are out and members are shooting, the visual and audible impact would be minimal, as archery is carried out at a slow pace for safety reasons. Archery is an English heritage activity which has been practiced all over England, including Keswick, for hundreds of years. As such, it could be suggested that the practice of archery would add to the designated heritage of the area. Finally, I'd just like to say, whilst we understand the Lake District National Parks Committee's responsibility to protect the open countryside, the unique safety constraints mandated by Archery GB means that the field is our only viable option. We're prepared and want to work with Lake District National Park to ensure.
Thank you, Mr. Dawson. Thank you. 5 minutes, great. Just hang on there, just in case any members have any questions. Members, any questions? Peter.
Thank you very much. You didn't mention, it might have been just you're out of time. I understand that you've taken a petition in support. Can you tell me how many people have signed that petition?
Currently, last count, it was over 1,000. 1,013.
Thank you very much.
Questions, Rick?
What was that in support of?
The actual, it was a Keswick community supporting Keswick Archers being able to shoot at the field.
At that particular
yes, that particular place. Because obviously, Keswick Archers is a part of the community, and we have numerous members of the community, different groups coming in to shoot with us. So obviously people have enjoyed it in the area.
Just one question, Jackie.
Yeah. So how many members do you have in the archery?
48.
48, and do they shoot it? Can anybody go down at any time, or is it designated time? Excuse me.
Anybody can go down at any time, but as I've said, it's 3% of the whole year when we'll be shooting. But yeah, it's on average it's usually 10 people shooting at a time.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? Can I just ask, do you shoot over the winter?
Just at weekends.
Yeah. I used to be in an archery club once, and we didn't do the winter. It was always terrible trying to find land when the particular place I was at. But okay, well, thank you very much. Can I ask you to return to your seats? Okay, members, we're into our discussion part of the meeting, of the item. Who would like to start? Peter.
Thank you, Mark. I think this is a really interesting one. And it's one of those ones where we've got, it's policy compliant on one hand, and it's not policy compliant on the other hand. So in terms of policy compliant, policy 23, just for members' benefit, to save you scrabbling around, is to sustain community and cultural facilities and local services and ensure communities have improved availability and access to high quality green spaces and recreational facilities. So I think I read through a lot of the letters of support in support of this application, and was very struck by the number of people who are highlighting specific health and well-being benefits. There's repeated references to it being therapy, a safe space, sense of community, inclusion and accessibility. And a large number of the people who had reported, who had written in support, talked of ADHD, autism, mobility issues. So I think it's much more than just a recreational club, and it's not a commercial operation. It's very much a community facility. And I think the 1,000 letters of support or signatures of support, I think is very significant. And this is from a local community club that hasn't garnered 1,000 signatures by sending a national email to thousands of people across the country, which is sometimes the case with other petitions. So it is definitely supported by policy 23, I would argue. For 3 reasons, the officers are recommending a refusal. 1, on the flooding count, but we do have the new EA letter of no objection, and the local flood authority has no objection. Policy 2 is the provision of building or development in open countryside. And Jim asked about the risk of it being repeatable, because the officers said that if repeated, cumulative impacts would be harmful to the implementation of the local plan. But I think that this is a very unique application in that it is of significant benefit to the local community. And I think the visual impact is very low, which I'll go on to in a moment. So the 3rd reason for rejection was the visual impact. Now, I've had a wander around the site. I live in Braithwaite. It's 5 minutes from my house. I know the area very well. But I don't know this area very well because you can't get to it. There is no public access to the site. The track that you access it to has a big sign saying no public access. So the nearest you can get to it is around the public rights of way, and it is not visible from the public rights of way. So 515, 5.15, the officer says the impacts are small in scale and only viewed from a limited number of locations. The impacts would be harmful to the undeveloped pastoral character of the field. Now, you can only see that field from being in the field. So while there may be limited, there may be visual harm at that location, it is only visible from the immediate location. So as I go back to the beginning, this is one of the ones where we have to debate. It's clearly policy not compliant in some areas, but it is policy compliant in others. And I think this is where this committee has to kind of have a discussion, which I hope I can kick off with. But I think that the low visual impact and the inaccessibility of it, coupled with the significant benefit to that community, I think, are key factors. And I've shared my thoughts, but I look forward to hearing what everybody else has to say.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Rick?
Yeah, the concept of a low visual impact is an argument that can be used over and over again. I would suggest a bungalow on this site would have a low visual impact. It's the policy that's trying to protect the open countryside, and therefore, just to repeat the argument of a low visual impact over and over again doesn't hold water to my mind. I don't think officers are questioning the benefits of sport, recreation, and the well-being that it can bring. All the suggestion is that pick a decent, proper location for it, and we'll support you. This isn't the proper location, and that's the differentiation. And I think the risk is, I asked the question about the news class. It's not just archery, it could be any recreational use of this land. And a football club might find it cheaper to locate to this site. And where do you draw the line? I share Phil's view about using a condition to say you can only do archery on this site a few days a week is very difficult to enforce.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Phil?
Well, yes, I mean, I can see this discussion going on, really. I wouldn't feel that I'm sufficient of an expert on the geography of Keswick to really impart wisdom on this, but it does strike me, I'm trying to think within the town boundary, where is there somewhere that's not in open countryside where you could actually do archery? I don't suppose there is anywhere. And yeah, I'd be interested to find out where the open fields are that could be used, because I'm sure that the parish clerk said there is nowhere. The parks you can't use. To me, this is really quite a sustainable location for this type of activity, which is promoting public good. Yes, it could be discussed. It is policy compliant. It isn't, but it is promoting public good, and as such, I do feel it's appropriate that we should be lending support if we can.
Yeah, there's no hard boundary of where the open countryside starts. It's what's well related. So you're talking about, yeah. Doug.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I was following on from what Philip said, which was where I was going to start, which is with the argument about essential need and sequential test, and how much of that weighs in what policy we give precedence to. We've heard what Philip was saying about how there have been various other sites within the town boundary that have been attempted to be used and haven't been available or haven't been allowed. Whether that is sufficient to override such a use with or without additional conditions, as has been discussed, is up to members, and I think that's a personal decision for the committee members as a whole. But certainly it seems to me that sequential test, to a greater or lesser extent, has been undertaken, and therefore that ticks that box that it's been done. Whether it's sufficiently or not comes down to individual members. One question I have, if I may, on a different point, which is Peter mentioned about the EA's new designation. Has the flood map for planning been used that's up to date in the comments that you made? I don't really care about flood risk planning, but the flood map for planning.
Yeah, so we're aware that the classification as flood zone 3B is correct.
I just wanted to tick that box. Thank you. So I'm looking forward to how this develops, but I think the sequential test argument is the important one, as well as the individual landscape issues and the potential adverse effect.
Thanks, Doug. I'll just run round first. Jim?
So listen to the debate with interest. I don't know the area, even though I know Keswick well, but I do know that I can get the relationship with the sport. And I think this is a really fine balanced one. So thank you, Phil, for bringing it to us, because I think it's the right thing to do, that we need to discuss this, because it's very, very finely balanced. And I've listened to the discussion. And I think what's coming to mind here is, one is, this is a unique sport in archery, almost unique. It does have some cultural value and heritage value. It's a quiet sport. And it's a difficult sport to accommodate. And I think that's very important in the decision I'm going to come to. And what I'm trying to do there is exclude it from things like kicking the football about or playing a rugby game. So you do need quite a unique location, which I think has already been brought up. I think the impact of the development is very limited. And I'm of a mind to say that the balance of the very limited nature of the development versus the benefits of the sport, I'm leaning to the benefits of the sport. And I'm inclined to propose that we don't go with the officer's recommendation, but with a series of conditions. Number one, this shouldn't become a commercial operation. Now, I'll not get the wording right, Andrew, but just the principles. I wouldn't want it to develop into a commercial operation as long as it stays as an amateur sport. But the avoidance of doubt, and I'll probably tell it couldn't happen anyway, but there should be no further development of the site. It should be returned to its original agricultural use if the archery activity ceases. And we make it clear that this is only for archery. We wouldn't want it to develop into a football pitch or a rugby pitch or anything else. And I think with that in mind, and it is a really fine balance, I'm inclined to say we should agree the changes. And then that's a proposal, Mark.
Right, thank you, Jim. We'll just discuss those conditions with Andrew first. There's three main ones. Well, I'll let you go through it, Andrew.
Can I make some suggestions? And I'll probably, in terms of not commercial, rather than not commercial, that's quite tricky for us to do. You may have some reservations about it, but I could see that you may want to go with a condition which maybe says that it could only be used by members of the Keswick Archery Club, for instance. But it'll be very difficult for us to deal with not commercial. I think I'll struggle with that. No further development. I just don't think that condition is necessary, because if there is more development, either material change of use or operations, that'll be subject to planning control. So I think we could just strike that one away. Return to agriculture if it ceases to be used. I can understand entirely why you'd want that. As part of that, I think you would want to make sure that all of the paraphernalia is removed. So the containers, whatever might be out on the ground. I have a question for whether in your mind you would see the hard standing being soiled and seeded, or just left to remain as a useful hard standing for agriculture. I'll just take your advice on that. And only archery, yes, fair enough.
Would you wish to amend your proposal?
I'm happy with those amendments. I understand the complexity of commercial, and I expected the feedback on future development. And I would be inclined to say we would leave the hard
standing.
Yeah,
quite useful. Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Right, I have Chris next.
Well, I'm pleased to be able to support the previous speaker. I'm looking for somebody to find a way through this, that we're going to allow this archery development to continue. It seems to me to be an important sort of quaint sport that we should keep going. And I recognise that they've made an awful lot of effort to try and find some of the premises in Keswick. It's not possible. I don't want to have people shooting arrows to the Fitz Park. I thought it very useful that we had the applicant's photographs included in there to show us that it talked about where we could see the containers, because we couldn't. There is no visual impact in there, and if you can't see it until you're in the field, it's even less of an impact. So I'd like to support finding a way of allowing this to go.
Is that you seconding it?
Yes.
Chris? Okay, I'll say that's a second. Jenny.
Yeah, you said about just Keswick using it, and within the speaking they said about having other clubs come. Could it be put in as amateur or members of archery, an archery club on occasion or something like that?
I know what you're driving at. Can you leave? I think you'll probably just have to leave that one with me. And I understand what you're driving at. What you're driving at is, if I've heard it right, is that you essentially you are persuaded by the specific characteristics of the sport, but also the community benefits of the club, and the club operating and offering what it does. And by inference, I'm assuming you would be maybe less persuaded if it was just a commercial operator who said, I'd like to run an archery thing for the public as a tourist attraction. That's the kind of, they're the kind of two sides of it. And we've just got to work it out because, as you point out, Jenny, rightly, competitive archery, other clubs will come along. If a professional comes along, all the better. So you probably don't just want it to be amateur either. So I can see what you're driving at. If you're comfortable from what I've said that I understand what's in your mind, can you leave it with us? Is that okay?
Yeah. There's not many professional archers, but yes. So it's a club use. We get it. So Andrew will have to then think quite hard on how to word that. Anyone else? Jackie.
Just with that, could it be guests of Keswick Archery Club? So invitation only.
Okay, members, so we've got that proposal second. Anyone else wish to make any comments or alternative proposals? No. Okay, so I think what I'm hearing is that members feel that the community benefits of having the club there outweigh the conflict with the policy. So we've got a proposal from Jim, seconded by Chris, that we grant permission with subject to a condition that's only of some use to archery club use, only for archery, so that excludes use of a football pitch or a rugby pitch, and then should the use cease, it should return to agricultural use, which includes removal of the containers and the bits and pieces like the benches and things, however they'll leave the hard standing. So that's where we are. All those in favour? All those against? Do the numbers.
So that's 8-1, and that's approved with conditions.
Okay, so the planning permission granted. Oh, Andrew, do you want to say something?
Yeah, sorry, just as is the way when things go a determined contrary to recommendation, we'll provide a reason.
The reasons
on the decision notice. So if I can just check that I've got this right, I would be summarising that as that the committee identified that archery as a sport has special and distinctive characteristics, that there were substantial benefits of the use identified which align with policy 23 in terms of sport well-being, and that those benefits were sufficient to identify to outweigh the visual and landscape harm that members also identified. Is that fair?
Characteristics and needs, maybe.
Yeah.
Is there any benefit to be had in identifying this is a very unique situation, and it's a combination of community benefit and it's isolated and hard to see location? Just to cover the point that Phil made of its replicate.
There's very specific, I'm hearing that there's very specific circumstances here that members have identified around the sport, the club, and the site specifics and all those three.
This should not. This is a very unreplicatable situation.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Unique. Oh, okay, members. Would anyone like a 5-minute break, or do you want to go into the next one? 5 minutes. Okay. So if we could come back at, let's say 1:15. Welcome back, everybody. Our next application is number 3 on the schedule, and that's Another Place, the Watermillock, and Catherine is going to take us all through it.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. This application is at Another Place, which is a hotel comprising an extended villa close to the shore of Ullswater, and the application is before you today as my recommendation is contrary to the views of Matterdale Parish Council. Here's a location plan showing Another Place Hotel close to the lakeshore with Pooley Bridge up towards the northeast of the plan there. And here's the site plan showing part of the hotel. So planning permission was granted in 2017 for the redevelopment of the site, and that included the 2 3-storey stone clad accommodation blocks, which are shown here and here. And the villa, the rendered villa, is this building here. I'll show you some photos of that. But the stone cladding used on the 3 elevations of the accommodation blocks here, this elevation, this one and this one, hasn't been successful and has resulted in water ingress to the building. So the authority granted permission in 2023 for the replacement of the stone cladding with timber cladding, and then this application seeks a further amendment to that material for the replacement of the stone cladding with a horizontal timber effect slate grey weatherboard cladding. So here's a view from the car park. You can see the rendered villa at the forefront of the picture, and then one of the accommodation blocks with the stone cladding. And then looking round, you can see 2 of the accommodation blocks, and the stone cladding to be replaced is on those 3 elevations that you can see. The remainder of the elevations are rendered on these buildings. You can also see there's the swimming pool building, and that contains timber cladding as well. And again, looking around at the 2 accommodation blocks and the villa. So this plan shows the as existing stone cladding to the top and the as proposed weatherboard cladding on the bottom plan. And again, this is a closer up view of the elevations that they'd like to replace with the weatherboard cladding. And then a photo of an example of the colour and the type of the cladding proposed to be replaced here. So as I set out in my report, I consider that the main issue is the appearance of the proposal and its impact on the character of the area. I consider that the slate grey weatherboard cladding proposed will maintain the difference between the villa, the rendered villa, and the accommodation blocks. I think it would be recessive and distinctive from that rendered villa. The proposed cladding, in my opinion, wouldn't be incongruous, given the context of the site, the different materials that there are around the site and the different building types. I also don't consider that the difference between the previously approved timber cladding and the weatherboard cladding now proposed would be discernible beyond the application site. So I consider that the application is acceptable and recommend approval with conditions as set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Members, any questions for Catherine? Nope. Okay, we'll go straight into our public speaking. We've got Mr. Tongue. Just the questions. Right, everybody think of a question. So members, do you have any questions for Mr. Tongue? He's the you're the agent, yeah. The Marley weatherboarding, it's like a cement stuff, is it?
It is, yeah. It's I think it's been quite a saga why there's to find a material that both will pass building regs and the client's insurers. That's been the big issue. So, but it is, yeah. It's a fibre cement boarding.
Yeah. Okay. No questions, members? No. Thank you very much. So members, straight into it then. Who wants to go first? So we're going from timber. It's got approval for, as shown on the screen there, with timber. This application is to change from timber to the grey weatherboarding. What do you think? Bill?
I'm happy to move the officer's recommendations.
Okay. Jackie?
I'm happy to second that.
So no significant harm in changing. Okay. Anyone else want to say anything? Okay. Right. So proposal from Phil, second by Jackie. All those in favour to grant as per officer's report? Yeah. So unanimous? Yeah. Was that everybody else? Oh, okay. We're not unanimous. Right. Everybody in favour, please hold your hand up. Okay. All those against? Abstain? Right. Okay. You get the numbers there?
I do. So that's 8 in favour, 1 abstention. That's approved.
Sorry, we've got to put on the minutes how many We have in favour, how many against? And the audio recordings, yeah, so we try and say it afterwards so people who might not be able to see or be here can hear what the exact conclusion was. Thank you very much, Catherine. So number 4 on the schedule, we're going to Dockwright Meadow Caravan Park at Lamplugh. Kelsey's come to take us through this one.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is an application at the Dockwright Meadow Caravan Park in Lamplugh for the change of use from a touring caravan site to a static caravan site. The application is before committee today as my recommendation to approve with conditions is contrary to the objections of Lamplugh Parish Council and more than 5 households. So the application site is located on the northwest boundary of the National Park, just to the south of Lamplugh. Closer view of the site. So this is the site that's existing, quite a long linear stretch, extends southeast from the highway. The highway carries the coast-to-coast cycle network as well as the national park boundary. And then to the south of the site, on the opposite side of Rakegill Beck, you have public footpath. So this is just an aerial view of the site, so a bit of a better idea of the context. So again, you've got the existing site to the southeast corner. It's kind of 2 long elongated loops connected by an internal road. You can see some of the existing pitches on there as well. Then on the opposite side of the highway, you have Inglenook Caravan Park. That's an existing static caravan park located on the Cumberland side of the boundary. And then just further north of the caravan park, you've got the Millfields housing development site. And then surrounding that, that's the kind of predominantly developed area, and then around that you have the agricultural fields. So just some views of the application site. So the left-hand photo is taken from the entrance to the Inglenook Caravan Park, looking east towards the application site. So that's the existing access, fairly wide access with that gate beyond it. Existing boundary treatments are hedging and trees, and then just beyond the gate you can see some of the existing development on the site, some hard standing and fencing. And on the right hand side you're now outside the application site's entrance, looking west towards the Inglenook caravan site. So these are just the 2 opposite sides of the road, and again here you've got the static caravans associated with Inglenook and their boundary treatments, kind of lower maintained hedges. So a few more of from the roads, just to give a bit more site context. Again, this one is the left-hand side photo is from outside Inglenook, this time looking south down the road. On the left-hand side of the photo is the application site behind the hedging and the trees. The right-hand side is the Inglenook site. Right-hand photo, pretty much the same location, but looking north towards Lamplugh. Again, Inglenook on the left and the application site on the right behind the boundary treatments. Again, just a bit more site context. So the left-hand photo is taken from further south down that road. So again, Inglenook caravan site on the left, application site on the right. And then the right-hand photo, this one's taken from further north, so further into Lamplugh, looking south towards the application site. Application site's on the left-hand side of that photo behind the trees and the hedging. And then you can just see to the right some of the caravans from Inglenook site. So these photos are taken from the public right-of-way. Left-hand photo was the best view I could get into the site from the public right-of-way. So you've got Rakegill Beck kind of in the foreground, looks a bit overgrown there, and then beyond that the application site. And then the right-hand photo is looking west down the public right-of-way. You've got open agricultural fields to the left, and then the application site and Rakegill Beck on the right. Now moving into the site, so the left-hand photo is an existing reception building at the site entrance, hard standing and fencing. It's proposed to demolish the existing building. On the right-hand photo, we're looking east into the application site. You see some of the existing roads within the site, speed bumps, pitches, some of the electrical outlet points and refuse areas. And then just to give a bit of context, to the right of that photo where you can see the boundary treatments, hedges and trees, Rakegill Beck lies on the opposite side of that, as does the public right-of-way. Again, left-hand photo is just a closer view of some of the infrastructure that's already in place on the site. So some of the electricity and water points and refuse collection areas. Right-hand photo, moving further into the site, but this time looking west towards the access, just to give you a bit of a sense of the enclosed nature of the site. Quite high, well-established vegetation around it, and then yeah, you've got the roads, the pitches, and all the other paraphernalia associated with that. Finally getting there, the left-hand photo is the easternmost point of the site, so where you had that kind of second smaller loop of caravan pitches. Again, very similar to the rest of the site. You've got kind of an internal road that then loops around with pitches positioned off that. The hedge that's shown in the middle of that loop is proposed for removal. And on the right-hand photo, we're back by the site entrance, this time looking northwest. Beyond the hedge, you can see some of the caravans from Inglenook, and then beyond that, some of the housing as part of Millfields, and the site is slightly elevated. So this is the existing site plan. So not a lot to show on this other than the areas in red. So the kind of top left-hand corner, you've got the reception building that's proposed for demolition, and then you've got the trees that are identified for removal in red as well. And then you can just see the beck that runs along the southern edge of the site. The proposed site plan, so I'll talk you through this. So the number of pitches is reducing from 53 to 44. And rather than having that kind of two-loop layout, it's now a single internal road that runs down the centre. That's been done so the caravans can be moved on the southern boundary further into the site, further away from the beck, and then we've got some additional tree planting, mostly largely along that southern boundary, but also towards the highway boundary as well. We've got the parking for proposed vehicles, at least one parking space. Most of them look like they could accommodate two, and they've been identified as reinforced grass. Just an indicative image of the proposed caravan type, very similar to the caravans on the opposite side of the road. They'd have a length of 12.2 metres, a width of 3.96 and a height of 4, with raised timber deckings around them. And then proposed floor plans, there's two types of caravan proposed, either a 2-bed or a 3-bed, but again, fairly standard static caravan type within the site. So the proposals receive policy support from Policy 02, 11 and 18. They utilise an existing tourism site, change of use from just touring to statics. There would be a loss of touring pitches, which Policy 18 asks us to address, but we're satisfied that the information submitted as part of the application has addressed that point and identified that there is a lack of interest for touring pitches within this particular part of the national park. The design and appearance and scale of the caravans are consistent with the character and appearance of the area, and the site itself would be significantly better screened than the neighbouring site. Concerns about the disposal of foul water and the impacts on nutrient neutrality have been addressed within the submitted shadow HRA, and we're satisfied now that the proposed package treatment plant will address those without requiring further mitigation. And for that reason, the application is recommended for approval with conditions.
Thank you, Kelsey. Members, any questions for Kelsey? Will Peter, then Jackie, and then Jenny?
Mine's a super quick one. On the site plan, it refers to the tree planting, 12 to 14 gram heavy standards and 2 metre clear stem. Does 2 metre clear stem mean what I think it means, which is like it's a tree that's 2 metres with clear stems, so it'd be like a 3 metre tree. It's a decent sized tree.
Yes.
Perfect. Just for my education, what does a 12 to 14 gram heavy standard refer to? Anybody?
It's the tree sizes. So the trees are size, and I'm not a tree expert by any means, but you know, whips and then standards, heavy standards, extra heavy standards. It's a sizing of trees. I couldn't tell you specifically what the height of a heavy standard is off the top of my head. I can find out for you. No,
Yeah,
they're
you can buy them as big trees. Yeah. Jackie.
Just the demolishing the reception building, how are they going to be servicing the guests?
So it's not been proposed to have any kind of on-site servicing of guests. I think it would just be a kind of pull up, use the caravan site and leave self-servicing, but the agent is here if they can answer that question.
Jenny.
Yeah, my concerns were about the red squirrels, and just any disturbance, you know, from putting hard standing things for caravans and things, and will the trees be replaced, like for like, sort of, with the amount as well, the amount of trees replaced.
Yeah, so as far as red squirrels, we've got an ecological report that's not identified any drays within the site, but there are mitigation measures proposed, and we've conditioned those as well to avoid impacts on all ecological aspects. As far as trees, the trees that are being removed are low quality within the site rather than on the edges, and there's a significant amount of tree planting proposed, partly for BNG reasons, but also landscaping reasons.
Any other questions, Rick?
Yeah, there's a few things that crop up. You say there's a evidence of a lack of demand for tourists. Yeah, we've got no detail of that. Over the weekend, there was quite a lot of camper vans strolling around West Cumbria looking for somewhere to stay. Are we really satisfied that there is a lack of demand for touring sites? The internal roads, there's new roads proposed. Have we got details of that? There's a lot of drainage. There's 44 dwellings all served off one treatment plant with levels and access. It doesn't necessarily seem to work. Visibility displays, they don't work. It's not possible on this site. And the other, it's how you actually manage these static sites. You talk about short-term holiday lets, but I've asked this question before. How do you define short-term holiday lets? A lot of reference to Inglenook. A lot of their caravans are sold off into separate ownership, so they're owned by people as opposed to managed by the caravan site. So they've lost control over the occupation of them, and it is a problem locally. So there seems to be a lot of easy questions that aren't answered within the application or the report.
Okay, yeah. As far as demand, we were very persuaded by the fact the site was previously run by the Motorhome and Caravan Club. They are perhaps one of the best places for running the Tory Caravan site, and sold the site and stopped using the site because of the lack of demand. We've not identified a suitable replacement within the local area, but we've also not received any representations that have stated there is demand for that type of accommodation. Ultimately, we placed a lot of weight on policy 11 as well, the West Distinctive Area policy, which would in principle allow a new caravan site, a new static caravan site here. And given that it's an existing touring caravan site, we considered that when you consider the local plan as a whole, it was generally in accordance with the requirements of the development plan. Internal roads, we could condition the hard standing. I think we considered it to be acceptable given the very limited views. We would generally be reducing the levels of hard standing. At the moment, you've got roads that loop around the edge plus roads running through the centre. We're now sticking to one that runs down the centre. So there's a slight reduction in hard standing, but if members wanted to place a condition on the material, that would be fine. Drainage arrangements, yeah, we've got quite detailed RG Parkins reports on drainage, and in addition to that, we've also put on a condition relating to site levels, particularly in relation to flood zone impacts, but just to be aware of what additional levels may be needed. And we've also got a condition requiring drainage routes and where they will be taken to, so they'll be installed. So we have got that information conditioned. Visibility displays, we've not received any indication from the local highway authority or from the applicant that the visibility displays can't be achieved. at this stage, as I say, the two people best placed to know, the local highway authority and the applicant, both have seen, well, the local highway authority requested the condition. The applicant has had sight of the condition and neither have raised any concerns about it. So at this stage, we've no reason to think that it couldn't be achieved. And then managing the short-term holiday let, that's a fairly standard condition. Whenever we have changes of use to holiday accommodation, we place a condition on that it must be used as short-term holiday let to comply with the requirements of policy 18. There will always be compliance issues, but we're generally over those. I don't know if Andrew wants to add anything on that, but
The condition is derived from, it wasn't an unold, wasn't a PPG or PPS, it was practice guidance published by government, which recommended condition on those terms as being the mechanism for controlling occupancy on caravan sites, and we've used that condition.
In the past, we've looked at it and we've tried to define short term, no longer than 8 weeks. And
yeah, if you wanted to bring more clarity as to what short term meant, we could do that right again with you. Yeah, we can look at that if that's something that members would like.
Just to add something to that, with the hotels, it used to be 28 days as a short.
Yeah. Any other questions for Kelsey? No. Okay. We'll go for our public speaking. We have first up, we have Mr. Braithwaite, the Parish Council. So Mr. Braithwaite, you've probably seen it. It's 5 minutes to speak. If you go over 5 minutes, we'll let you know. And if you could press the microphone button when you do speak. Thank you.
Well, good morning and thank you I'm Roger Braithwaite, Chairman of the Parish Council, and I'm also representing the views of tens of residents in that locality. I gather you haven't had a site visit as a panel. That's what the purpose of the photographs was. There's two main themes here. It's the intensity of this development, and it will result in nearly 100 static caravans in a locality area that is typically a handful of houses, and that characterises Lamplugh. So I believe that is in strict contravention with the spatial strategy. That's just a given. There was no visual assessment done, and that would be a pretty standard thing to do. There was one done when the Millfields development was done. There is a loss of the touring site, and there was no evidence tabled to show that. And also, incidentally, while I'm on that, the other site, when it was a touring site, it only really operated for barely 9 months of the year and was only full at Easter and bank holidays. It was low occupancy, it was seasonal. This is an absolute sea change of use for this land. And this is this thing about this over-reliance on what the previous use of the site was. And when the lawfulness certificate was granted, it made it look like as if it was a permanent site. And that's been used as a reason that there's no mitigation needed for the nutrient neutrality. The development of this site will result in an increase of phosphorus into the catchment area. There was no discharges to Rake Gilbeck previously. All the waste was tankered off, and that waste was the foul waste, which constitutes 63% of the loading from any development. The high waste layers, which have just been touched on, are impossible to reach. You cannot even get 215 metres. So, and if you want that, you'll have to remove the mature hedges, and there's 3 mature trees that will have to be felled to get to that. The parking for the caravans is inadequate. There is no car park on the site for any overspill. It's narrow roads. There isn't even verge parking. There's no amenities in Lamplugh. There's one pub. There are invasive species on site. There's Himalayan balsam all over the top end of the site. This was not detailed in the ecological report. Why, I don't know. It's pretty obvious stuff. You can see it from the public right of way. The woodland next to Rake Gilbeck is not represented at all in the ecological survey, at all. So don't be confused by what the plans tell you, because it gives you that impression that that's the site plan. It isn't. It isn't. There's no clear operating model for the site, how it's going to be run. And I can quote from, there was a, from the applicant's agent that actually said on the 30th of October, there is no intention for short-term lettings, which might create more traffic movements than holidaymakers wanting to return to their permanently sited caravan without the hassle of moving it every time they wish to visit the site. That's there, that's in the submission. How the site would operate in terms of safety, maintenance, where would the warden live, where would they keep the equipment to manage the site? There's no buildings, which has led to some people thinking, is this just an extension of Inglenook over the road, which has caused enormous problems over 20 years. The local council, Copeland Council as it was then, lost control and walked away. And then eventually a sui generis agreement was allowed so they could keep the caravans, of which there are 55, not 43 as that's in the officer's report. And then I know you touched on this. The occupancy condition is as weak.
Thank you, Mr. Braithwaite.
That's right.
That's it. And just hang on a second, in case we have some questions from members. Members, any questions for Mr. Braithwaite? No, not at the minute, but thank you very much. Could I ask you to return to your seat? Our next speaker is Mr. Hills. I believe you're the agent for the application. So Mr. Hills, same again, 5 minutes. If you could press the button whenever you're ready.
Hello, Chair, members of the committee. I'm the agent acting for the applicants. They sent their apologies. They've had a family bereavement. Otherwise, they would have been here today to talk to you. Just a few points that have been raised. Objectors seem to be quite concerned about traffic movements. The existing site is 53 touring sites. The proposal is 44. In theory, and I know you'll say that this site isn't popular, so it hasn't been used like this, but in theory that could be 53 caravans and camper vans accessing that site morning and night every day. The success of the site as a touring site, it failed as a touring site with the previous owners. That's not to say if somebody came along as wanting a touring site with a different approach that site wouldn't be considerably heavier use than it currently is. The other issue with the touring site is that they're generally full of white caravans, which are sort of, I would argue, are more visually intrusive in the landscape than green statics. So in terms of traffic movements, the history says if you look at other static sites around the county, they don't really create very many traffic movements. The confusion about short term, my definition of short term was somebody arriving one evening and going the following day, not the short term that you might be considering for avoiding these becoming permanent residences. So the argument, I mean, the ecologists have done a huge amount of work. The trees, I'm afraid I disagree with the previous speaker, are accurately showing this, resulted from a detailed topographical survey, a detailed arboricultural report. The proposals have moved the statics away from the beck. At the moment, if you go on site, a lot of the pitches are literally up to the edge of the beck. In terms of ecology, looking after wildlife, that's a really bad situation to have. By bringing everything away at least 10 metres away from the beck, we've come away from the existing trees. We're taking away some of the sort of poor specimens that were planted as part of the touring site within the middle of the site, and we're proposing some significant planting. The reference to standards that made me smile, but they are proper trees rather than little sticks with a green thing around them. So I think I'm just trying to remember the other things that were mentioned. The balsam would be dealt with by any responsible landowners, and it might not have been picked up in the ecology report when they did the survey. The visibility displays have been mentioned. That's been put forward by the Highway Authority as a condition for us to deal with. I think, oh yes, the other way, on the sewage side, at the moment the site has two different systems. It has a system for the LSANs, which is like it's just a cesspit really that has to be emptied, and it has a septic tank. We're proposing, and that was for the whole site, we're proposing a packaged treatment plant which is comfortably sized for the occupancy that's being proposed. And I think those were the main issues to address to you.
Thank you, Mr. Hills. Just hang on a second if members have any questions. Jackie and then Jenny. Jackie.
Just how are they looking at operating the site? That would be my question, with no reception area or no such servicing as such.
I've asked the applicants that actually while you were talking just now. They've said that they are already have already got interest locally from people who would manage it. They would have a local person. There's even somebody from Lamplugh who's applied to the applicants to run the site on a day-to-day basis. So they would visit the site, make sure it's kept clean, deal with any queries. The applicants have spoken to Inglenook. They're nothing to do with Inglenook at all, but if there was ever any need for any reciprocity of people, then there's a relationship, there's a friendship there. They're not enemies.
Just following on from that, so how would people look at booking the site and checking in, checking out?
It's not a touring site. It's purely the lodges would be, or the statics would be owned by the individual. So the way that most of these parks work is that the owners provide a plot, and it's a service plot with a base and then very often the way that it works with other sites is that the owners of the site would then sell the lodge, so they keep control of what they look like and where they're positioned, but then the purchaser buys the lodge, and so it's owned. So other sites, I'm not sure about this one, but other sites I do deal with, the owners don't allow them to be sublet to other people very often. So it's your caravan, you would go there for holidays, 2 or 3 weeks or however many times you wanted to go.
With that, how do you know that the owner's not going to stay there full time or allow somebody else to stay there for a longer period than a short let?
That's down to site management, and that's why I was saying they've got a local person that's going to be looking after the site managers. I mean, I think there's also a planning condition to say that the site owners have to provide details of the individual owners of the individual static caravans. So that's something that you would have that information.
The suggested condition says a register has to be kept, which can be checked, and it's to avoid full-time residential use of it. Jenny, next.
Yeah, the roads have been mentioned as well. I can see a main road on there, but I don't know the area. So is it quite a wide road, or are they?
They aren't wide roads, but they're clearly capable of taking statics to be delivered, because Inglenook is the representation that there was a lot there. This is a little bit of the problem why I'm struggling a little bit here, because at the moment it has permission for 53 tourers. So there could be caravans, camper vans arriving every day if the site was used to its full potential. This will considerably reduce that, because the amount of traffic on those roads will be just people's cars coming and going as they want.
How often are the caravans replaced?
don't know the answer to that, but I mean, I do act for the Lake District Estates, which is, this is nothing to do with them whatsoever, but in terms of their holiday sites, and they're always kept pretty well up to date as far as I can see. I don't think it's down to site management. I don't think they usually fall into disrepair.
10+ years. Any other questions, Ray?
Yeah, you've commented on the visibility displays. Are you satisfied that you can comply with the condition?
We've got a highway guy who's looking at that. I'm told so, but I can't tell you sitting with my hand in my heart at the moment because I don't know.
So you aren't. Okay. I think there's quite a shared concern regarding how you're going to manage this site and how you're going to control occupancy so that it doesn't get used as a more permanent residential base. It's the problem with Inglenook. It causes issues all over. How do you control it? If you're selling these off, see, I'm not even sure how you comply with the condition once you've sold the plot off. How do you envisage somebody who lives nearby being able to nip round and manage this? How do you manage the landscaping, the cutting the grass? So none of it seems to be answered. It's just a bit hit and miss.
And they have a management company. All these sites have management companies, so they will have a management company that will have a site manager that's a local resident. Landscape contractors can be looking after the grounds. There will be a tree management, woodland management plan, but it's sensible site management really. And I think the condition, the issue about occupancy and it not being abused, I mean, is covered by condition. I don't know how you administer that on other sites, but that would be the only way you could deal with it.
Yeah, other sites do have conditions. You've got to keep a register. Any other questions, members? Right. If there's no it doesn't have restriction, or wouldn't have restrictions on the year stretch. However, it does have restrictions short-term holiday letting, which requires maintain the operator. The operator maintain an up-to-date register of names and addresses on occupiers of the caravan, and she'll make the register available. So somebody would have to keep the register. So that's what the condition, as written or suggested, suggests. Any other questions? Otherwise, just one from me, Mr. Hills. We've heard that the previous owner of the site had touring caravan permission up to 53, but they had to sell because of lack of demand, or they have sold, and lack of demand was one of the reasons. What was the actual use? Do you know? Was it fully occupied, or is that before your time?
It was before my time, but as I'm aware, it was run by the Caravan Camping, whatever they're called, sorry, I might have got the wrong name, Motorhome Club, as a touring site. I mean, they've got sites all over the country, but this one wasn't successful.
I think one of the issues with the Caravan Club is that they rent the space out to members as opposed to being open market. So occupation and use of it is restricted to members.
Yeah, you've got to remember to cite there. Yeah. Okay, no more questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Hills. I'm going to ask you to return to your seat. Okay, members, we've got this one before us. Chris wants to start. Chris.
I won't be making any recommendation here, but I just want a couple of observations. And first of all, declare an interest. I own a small white caravan which I tow about and put various places. I wouldn't live in one of those hideous green things if it paid me. But the reason that the occupancy rate wasn't very good beforehand on a caravan and camping club site is if I'm looking somewhere to put my little white box, that was the last place I'd put that too. I didn't find that the clientele on caravan club sites is nowhere near. I mean, it's not friendly to children. It's overlaid with dogs, and generally speaking, it would keep me away from it. There's an absence of touring sites in West Cumbria, and I just don't really like this application.
It's okay. Who else would like to speak? Jackie.
I've got major concerns over the management and enforcement on it, but also they're designing a route along the coast, and so they are going to be looking for more touring caravan and mobile home sites. So it's I'm with Chris on this one. I'm sort of
Okay, Jackie, Jenny, sorry.
Yeah, my concerns are about the roads. I live in Fluteborough with over 1,000 caravans down at the bottom of one of our roads, and it causes, I don't know how many issues throughout the year. It's not a 12-month caravan park, but the roads are small, and delivery of the big caravans and what have you causes, I don't know how many
static delivery.
Yeah.
No, why?
I mean, if we were going to agree with the officer's decision, I'd sort of want to put a condition on that of the delivery of vans between certain times and stuff like that. We have that, within hours and on certain roads, and
Peter.
Can I just make a point on traffic if it's concerning members? I think that I appreciate the delivery of the units is a significant challenge, but I know they go in and out of Langdale, not infrequently because I step behind one. But in terms of day-to-day usage, I think there's going to be, if it could have been 50 caravans or motorhomes coming in and out every day constantly, which I experience in Braithwaite, where there's a large camping and caravanning site, versus that's what it has permission for now, versus the future permission, or the future, that the current application is going to have a lot fewer vehicle movements, I would argue, because it's people coming without a caravan, just with a car, and only to their occasional usage of the site. So I think it's going to have a lot less vehicle usage or vehicle movement than it could have had if it was fully occupied as a caravan and touring site.
Yeah, you would have the occasional static delivery, but these statics wouldn't be coming and going occasional. Rick, is that you?
I mean, following that as a discussion point, if we were going to forsake policy 18 because it's loss of touring caravan site, and we were justifying it on the basis that the site is not suitable for touring caravans, then you might find it acceptable. But we're saying there's no touring caravan demand in West Cumbria, despite suggestions that we're going to create one. It's getting the justification and reasoning right if you're going to go against contrary to policy, and I don't think we've demonstrated that yet.
There's policy 18, which suggests no loss of the touring sites. Phil.
Could I just ask this for officer clarification, please? On the number of occasions I've been to Lamplugh, it's always because I'm lost, and I'm never really sure where it is. And I was grateful for the parish clerk coming and saying to us that we are effectively making an opportunity to create a 50 caravan community, because it's not like in the olden days where people used to rock up and then rock away. We are effectively creating a bit of a community, and I'm just trying to work out, the parish clerk was saying that it's the spatial awareness of that the fact that you were bringing another community to sit on top of a very, very small group of houses, which is Lamplugh. How does that figure in our thinking? Because we are creating another community if we accept this, aren't we? who can stay as much as they like.
I don't think we viewed it as creating a new community. I mean, the existing site is a touring caravan site, and you have 55 pitches, or 53, whatever it is, pitches. We're simply reducing the number to 44, all to be operated. I mean, the condition's very clear. It's not to be a sole or main residence, it's short-term holiday letting accommodation. The character, the nature of the use is extremely similar to what's there at the moment, just at a slightly less intensive site capacity.
I guess, and you may, it's when I was listening to the representations from the parish, I guess what I was hearing, and I'm sure the shout up if I've misunderstood, was the concern that by introducing another large tourism or holiday or caravan site, however it may be used, it risks doing something harmful to the character of the village. Not necessarily partly what you see, but also something perceptual in the balance of permanent homes to non-permanent. That was what I took away from that. And that, you know, that is something that's capable of being a material consideration for you, if that is something that you perceive as being a potential harm.
Who hasn't spoken yet? I'll go Jim, then Jenny, then Peter. Okay, Jim.
Thank you. I think there's a few things. And they've all been covered, but just quick recap. The management and operation of the site leaves me feeling very uncomfortable. I remain very unconvinced that the short-term letting nature of the operating model works alongside the model we're hearing of selling the site. So I really don't get my head around that at all. And then I balance that against policy 18 and the loss of a touring camping type setup, which we know are under a lot of pressure at times in the Lake District, and we have destination plans to encourage more of that, and also dispersing over this area would be good. So based on all of that, but particularly policy 18, I would actually feel we should refuse this application.
Do you want to propose that?
I'm happy to propose it, Mark.
We'll take that as a proposal. We'll hold that there. So I was going to go Jenny and then Peter.
We turn Andrew's words on the head and say people aren't taking up houses, instead they're going to a caravan site to be part of the community of Lampley. Yeah, that's all.
Peter?
Thanks, Mark. This is an interesting discussion. So having read the application and making notes before, I was saying it's existing lawful use all year round. This has a lower density usage with better screening, and it's removing an old building, and there's extensive conditions. So I could see why the officer had recommended approval and was minded to follow that. But the discussion has brought up some interesting points, and I'd add to Rick's points about the fact the Camping and Caravanning Club haven't been able to, they have sold it because it didn't work for their business model, and they'd said that they don't have demand for it. That isn't the same as saying there isn't demand for a camping and caravanning site on that location, because the Camping and Caravanning Club have a high price point and a good level of services and facilities usually. So I appreciate that there's a lot of people who have camper vans and motorhomes and caravans who want somewhere to park or somewhere to stay, that there might still be opportunities. There might still be demand on that side run by somebody differently. So I'm conflicted on this one.
Does anyone else have any concerns about nutrient neutrality? We're taking a baseline of 53 fully occupied touring caravans. when we've been told that the previous site was not used, very much lack of demand. So that would suggest in actuality there was less potential pollution going in to the river. Natural England have suggested a really precautionary approach of assuming the lower demand. However, we are assuming that the full 53 touring caravans are there, potentially could be used at all times. But my concern was that if we go with that, then the actual reality of the situation would be more pollution, because the baseline isn't actually factually what is there against what is sort of theoretically there. Anyway, that's one for you. Would anyone else want to speak? Rick.
Just as a point of information, there is an extant planning permission for static caravans to the rear of the pub on the main road at Lampley. It's outside of the national park, and I would second Jim's proposal.
Anyone else want to say anything before we've had a proposal? I've had a second. Anyone else want to say anything else? Propose anything contrary? No? Okay, we'll go for the vote. So we've got a proposal from Jim Jackson, that's seconded by Rick Outhwaite, that we refuse the application for reasons of lack insufficient information for lack of demand for touring caravan site.
Introduction of policy 18.
As proposed, as per
per
policy 18.
And the second part is in my mind, the management of the site that hasn't convinced me that it would be managed on a short-term letting basis. Andrew, you want to challenge me on that?
No, I don't want to challenge. I just want to write the reasons down. I just want to explore to make sure I understand, so that I can reflect. If well, we can do that. We could do it, or we could just have now. We could just have to propose.
We could do it. Wait, maybe take the vote first, and then. But we know what the reasons are at this point. Okay, all those in favour of that proposal? All those against? All those abstain? The numbers for that?
8 in favour of refusing the application, 1 abstention.
Okay, so we've refused the application, and the reasons because when we refuse and go contrary to officers' recommendations, we always need some reasons to put in the report.
So I'm quite clear on the policy 18 point about concerns that it essentially it fails to demonstrate that there wouldn't be a harmful loss to the range of tourism accommodation contrary to policy 18. That's very clear. I understand you have concerns about the management, and you find the management arrangements either unacceptable or haven't been demonstrated to be acceptable. I get that. The thing I could just do with just clarity on is just whether the issue in terms of the failure to demonstrate acceptable management arrangements is simply around a policy harm in terms of ensuring that they are only occupied for short-term holiday purposes in accordance with policy 18, or is it something else?
No, I think beyond that, it's straying into a grey area, but I think the specific thing is, given what's not been demonstrated to me is how the proposed management arrangements would make sure that people didn't permanently occupy those units, or significantly for long periods occupy that units, because if you don't have a presence on site, how do you monitor that? Every time someone turns up, oh, I've just arrived, I've just gone, I've just arrived, I've just gone, but actually they're there all the time. You know, it just felt that we got a condition there, but it didn't demonstrate the site was going to be managed.
And I think for me, if there was a management company that were operating those reservations and those short lets that were managing that side of it, I think I'd be more comfortable with it. The fact that you're just leaving it to an owner, there's no management of that at all.
Okay, Andrew.
Yes, I understand that. So it's a concern that, notwithstanding the condition that was proposed and having applied yourself to the suitability of conditions, that the management arrangements do not give you confidence that even with the condition, it would be occupied in a manner which was consistent with the policy requirements. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to number 5, Hill Rising. Oh, hang on, everyone's back. Catherine's going to come tell us about Hill Rising, Smithy Lane at Bowness.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. This item is for a variation of a planning permission for a replacement dwelling at Hill Rising in Bowness. The application is before you today due to the number of objections received. So here is the application site. Sorry, skipping ahead. Here's the application site on Smithy Lane. The boundary of the proposed Windermere Villas conservation area is along the southwestern boundary of Smithy Lane, opposite the application site. The application site has neighbouring residential properties and sorry, it's just got a mind of its own. There we go. The application site has neighbouring residential properties and is on a sloping site. So this application, as I said, is an amendment to a planning permission. Planning permission was granted in 2021 for a replacement dwelling and garage with hard and soft landscaping, and works commenced on site and is well advanced. Amendments to the planning permission have been previously approved, and they include design amendments to the dwelling and landscaping on the site. And then this application seeks further design amendments to the 2020 permission. The amendments are set out in the report, but they include amendments to the hard landscaping of the site with the provision of an access drive and turning area on the flat roof of the garage and changes to the dwelling. As this application is for a material amendment to an extant scheme, we can't revisit the whole planning application, but only the amendments sought. So moving on to having, I think I'll leave the keyboard, maybe move. I'm going to turn the keyboard off. Moving on to the proposed site plan. So this is, like I said, as proposed, Smithy Lane running alongside the application site, the garage, turning area, a terrace, and the neighbouring residential properties adjacent, Barnhow and Woodside. Oh dear.
I do the mouse. Do you want to turn the mouse off?
Yeah.
No, it's the someone appears to have control of the PowerPoint presentation.
It's not us.
It isn't us. Do you want to turn the mouse off? Is the mouse off as well?
It's off now. Okay, so I'll just start again on this side. So that's a proposed site plan. As I said, there's Smithy Lane running alongside the site. You can see the replacement house with the terrace wrapping around, the driveway to the top of the site, and the adjacent properties Barnhow and Woodside. So moving on to the pictures. Oh dear. Moving on to the pictures, that is.
Okay, this is good.
Okay, so yeah, this slowly. This is a.
Shall we have a little break for 5 minutes? Yeah. All right. Thank you for your patience, everyone. We're back and working now, hopefully.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So as I said, I went through the plan, and that's the proposed site plan. I'll now take you through some photographs. So that's looking up Smithy Lane. The application site is just beyond the higher wall on the left of the picture. Moving up Smithy Lane, you can see again the application site, the flat roof garage, and to the left of the picture is the adjacent property, Barn How. And now I'm looking from the top. So now the application site, Hill Rising, is on the right of the picture, and I'm looking down Smithy Lane. So you can see there's different properties at different levels, different driveways at different levels around the site. There's a mixture of housing types. So I'm now within the application site. You can see Smithy Lane to the right of the picture, looking up towards where the proposed terrace and undercroft would be, the flat roof garage, and I'm stood just beyond where the proposed driveway would be. And then the next picture is looking up from that same spot, but looking around, and you can see Barn How in that picture now. And then the next picture I'm going to show you is up at the level of the ground floor patio doors. And I'm looking towards the rear of the site there, where there is a mobile home, and proposed landscaping comprises gabion baskets. And then the next picture I'm going to show you is from behind the property to the rear of the property. And there I'm looking with Woodside to the right of that picture, and I'm looking towards the mobile home and the proposed gabion baskets, the landscaping there. And then I'm stood again on the terrace. So that's the proposed terrace, and you can see the flat roof garage where there would be parking and the undercroft underneath the terrace. And again, you can see from there the different properties around Smithy Lane at different levels. And then looking around from that same position, again, you can see just the small extent of the terrace that's shown in that picture, the flat roof garage, and then other properties surrounding. And looking around again, and the proposed driveway can just be visible in that picture there. And then looking around again, so that's towards the Garden of Barn How and then properties beyond. So moving on to the proposed plan. So as I said, this is a proposed site plan. The next elevation I'm going to show you is the northwest elevation. So that shows the dwelling, the proposed terrace with the undercroft underneath, and the landscaping to the rear. And then the southwest elevation, so that's the elevation facing Smithy Lane. So you can see there the flat roof garage with terrace above, the proposed terrace with the undercroft and the driveway. And then this is, as I showed you, the rear elevation. That's the elevation facing Woodside, and you can see the gabion retaining walls to the right of the plan there. And then there they are to the left of the plan, and that's the proposed elevation facing Barn How. So next, these are the elevations of the proposed garage. You can see the driveway and the flat roof garage with railings for a terrace above. And then the other two elevations of the proposed garage and terracing. So I'm going to move on to the sections now. I appreciate there is quite a lot of detail on these sections, but you can see the red writing there indicates the existing ground floor and then the existing ridge of the house prior to its replacement. And you can see Smithy Lane to the right of the picture. And then this is the other proposed section, which was the section facing Smithy Lane. So again, you can see the flat roof garage, the terracing proposed, and the neighbouring properties. And then moving on to the proposed floor plan. So it's with undercroft to the left of the picture and 2 stories of accommodation. So as the application's a variation, I'm going to show you the extant planning permission plans and the as proposed. So the as approved plans, the extant plans are to the left of the picture and proposed to the right. So you can see the location of the dwelling, and the garage is a similar position. And we're looking at detail changes in terms of the landscaping, some of the changes to the dwelling on those plans. And then moving on to the as approved section is to the top of the plan here, as proposed to the bottom. So that highlights the proposed levels that are approved and through the extant planning permission, and those sought through this planning application. And again, the approved extent permission to the top and the proposed to the bottom of the picture here. Again, you can see Smithy Lane to the right and the changes in levels sought through this application. And then these are the approved elevations. You can see the flat roof garage was approved, and this is the extent planning permission and the elevations of the dwelling as well. And then the next two slides I'm going to show you are visualizations through the other two amendments that the authority have approved. So it shows the landscaping and the design changes that, as I said, we've previously approved on the site. And then this is back to the as proposed site plan with this planning application. So the main issues here I've set out in my report, and there's no updates to the report. I consider that the proposed amendments are acceptable in respect of their appearance and impact on the character and appearance of the area, given the extent planning permission, the context of the site, visibility, materials and the landscaping. I consider that the amendments to the dwelling would retain the character and appearance of the building as per the extent permissions. I don't consider the changes to the design of the dwelling and the landscaping of the site would result in any significant difference to the impact on the amenity of neighbouring residential properties compared to the extent permission subject to the recommended conditions. With regards to flood risk, the proposed driveway includes the provision of a drainage tunnel to intercept surface water discharging to a soakaway, and I consider this would ensure that the proposed changes wouldn't result in runoff onto the highway. And as such, I consider the proposal wouldn't give a rise to an unacceptable impact on the character and appearance of the area, residential amenity or flood risk. I'm satisfied that in all other respects, including the impact on heritage assets and highways and access, the development is acceptable. And as such, my recommendations for approval subject to the conditions set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Members, any questions? Rick?
Yeah, thanks for that. The previous approval had a garden shed and summer house. This application seems to suggest a mobile home. Can you explain what that's about?
The authority approved a lawful development certificate for a mobile home in the garden of Hill Rising to be used for residential purposes. So that was in 2021. So the current proposal seeks to retain that for residential purposes.
When you say residential purposes,
Ancillary to the use of the main house.
So should we add a condition at least to suggest that it should only
I don't think it's needed, because if it is used for purposes not ancillary to the main house, then it would be a breach. So I don't think it would be needed.
We sometimes have put informatives in the past, not conditions.
Sorry.
Sorry, are you Mr. Ellis? You'll get. You didn't hear. Okay. Would you mind just saying it out again, Catherine? Because Mr. Ellis hasn't been able to hear.
So the use of the mobile home would have to be ancillary to the use of the house. And if not, then it would be something that would need planning permission. It could be a separate use, but if it's used ancillary to the main house.
Well, I say that I have.
Can you hear me okay, Mr. Ellis? So the mobile home, the use of the mobile home is ancillary to the use of the house. So not for independent use, so not for holiday letting, not for a separate family to live in. Should it be used as an independent dwelling, it would need planning permission. Got it? Yeah. I've got Phil next.
Thank you, Catherine, for the report. I'm just looking at the representations, and I can see the representation from the Windermere Town Council, and then there were 11 letters of objection. Without giving away too much, where are the 11 letters from? Are they from people round and about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Ellis, you're going to speak very soon. Do you want to just sit? Would you? Yes, you're up for speaking in a few minutes. Because you're struggling hearing, do you want to just sit here and you might be able to hear the discussion a little bit sooner? Because you're going to be coming up in a minute, literally almost. Yeah. So hopefully you can hear better now. Okay. Sorry, Phil. Could you ask your question again?
Catherine, we've got the clear representation from Windermere Town Council, and then there's 11 letters of objection. Without giving away too many personal details, where are the 11 letters? I didn't think there were that many houses around there.
Yeah, many of them are from residents of the local area.
So within Smithy Lane, Burnley Green.
Yeah, they appear to be from memory. I couldn't say all of them, but yeah, from memory, many of them are.
Any other questions, members of Catherine? No? Okay. So we're now into our public speaking part. So Mr. Ellis, you're up next. You may have seen us do public speaking all throughout the meeting this morning. It's 5 minutes to speak. If you go over the 5 minutes, we'll interrupt you politely. So when you're ready to speak, if you could press the red button in the microphone and then just wait afterwards in case there's any questions from members. Okay, thank you.
Well, I live at Barnhow with my wife, and I think I do speak on behalf of the neighbours actually, who, as you know, made various representations. And I think there are two big issues. Firstly, the northwest elevated terrace. There has been a significant increase in the overlooking of the properties, particularly Belthwaite on the other side of Smithy Lane, due to this elevated terrace on the northwest elevation. The extant permissions specifically reference 2022-5715 with its 3D rendition did not consider or anticipate the effect of extending the footprint of hill rising and the addition of a 3 to 4 metre terrace at ground floor level. Indeed, the rendition didn't give any levels at that point. I have reviewed all the previous planners' reports, which are referred to overlooking by the house itself. However, I do believe that there are no references to the overlooking by this ground floor terrace, which is very elevated. It appears that this overlooking, which has been created by the ground floor terraces, is not covered by extant permissions, and I ask this committee to give this matter due consideration. The other big issue is parking on the garage roof, this flat garage roof. I believe that the matter of parking on the roof should be clarified, please. The planning officer refers in paragraph 5.8 in our report, refers to a flat roof garage and parking areas above the garage, unquote. There's another reference later on which quotes the use of the garage roof as a parking area, unquote. The planning officer, Catherine, doesn't seem to consider that the proposed parking area, this is in her report, would result in harm to residential amenity. It does remain unclear as to whether the roof of the garage itself is considered okay to park on, as opposed to the undercroft and the adjoining area. In our opinion and that of neighbours in Smithy Lane, there can be no doubt that the parking of the vehicles on the garage roof would be damaging to the amenity of the lane. Vehicles would be visible way above the heads of people as they walk by. We believe, unfortunately, that the planning officer has been too dismissive of this problem of vehicles, which with their headlights, as they use the flat roof of the garage, which would shine into the opposite properties, particularly Belfield and the other 3 properties there. There's bound to be a negative impact on the amenity. There are going to be fixed lights, I'm sure, to enable parking on the top of this flat roof, which will be there permanently during the winter months. And obviously, as cars go on and off, the headlights will shine into, in the case of Belthwaite, there's a kitchen there, a bathroom. I can't speak for the others necessarily. So there we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Members, do you have any questions? Any questions for Mr. Ellis? The only question is about the roof that's been raised. Catherine, is it proposed that cars could park on this flat roof?
Yeah, the garage wraps round, and you could park, and the applicant proposes to use it as a turning area and then parking within the undercroft, but it could be possible.
Yeah, so that would be elevated, I'm guessing, in relation to Belthwaite.
Yeah, I can go back to a picture to show you.
Yeah.
Just to visualise what Mr. Ellis has said, if there's a car parked on that roof terrace with its full beam headlights on, is it going to shine into?
That picture helps. So that's the flat roof and
Yeah.
the neighbouring properties.
Yeah. Also, it's quite a bit above. It's not going to go straight in. Okay. Right. Any other questions, members? No. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Ellis. If I could ask you to return to your seat. Our next speaker is Dr. Harman, who's the applicant. Okay, Dr. Harman, you've seen it all ready. 5 minutes when you're ready, if you press the button and
Right, so are we live? We are. Just read this briefly. There has been much confusion and disinformation surrounding this planning application as a result of, and has resulted in quite a number of the local residents complaining. If we read the complaints and then you read my reply that I submitted to the planning report, you'll see that much of the complaints were based on misinformation. They weren't accurate. There's a big concern about runoff, which we already catered for. The highways were happy with runoff. There was so there was concern about water coming down the road. Well, that isn't going to happen. So so I think that I've already answered the questions in relation to the local neighbours. There was also so a number of the neighbours got together, and I think that they perhaps got confused. They hadn't looked at the planning application clearly. They were just spooked by what might happen. I'm extremely grateful for Catherine Campbell and the time she's spent on the application, and she's written a very comprehensive report with Neil Henderson, and I think it's very clear and fair, and I assume everybody's had a chance to look at that. There are two minor points. There was discussion about composite cladding to reduce the impact of the property. I've got to build composite cladding around the raised deck to soften the look. And in fact, that was something that Belthwaite were very positive about, because actually it screens them from Barn Howe, which they find rather imposing up on the hill. And we were only discussing this yesterday. Mr. Ellis talked about Belthwaite, but I don't think he can say he's speaking for Belthwaite. He's speaking off his own bat. We did, however, having read Catherine's report, possibly have a larch cladding rather than composite, purely because it's a more natural material, and it's close boarded. I even brought a sample there, because that would actually be more ecologically friendly and more traditional material, which was mentioned in her report. So rather than composite, which she seemed less comfortable with. And just for clarification, we've replaced the white wet dash on fascia and the stone parts on the garage, so it's nice stone. We weren't actually going to change the sides. We were just going to do the existing wet dash. The approval conditions said we had to put stone all the way around. But we haven't. We're just doing a refurbishment of the garage. We haven't changed the garage. It's existing. Really hasn't changed in any great way, apart from we've repaired the foot collapsing roof, and we've put some drainage in to reduce the drainage. Lighting. Well, there are several lights in the area. There's several spooked lights that come on with that. Big spotlights that come on with animals and things. we have no intention of having large spotlights, and yes, in the middle of winter there may be briefly some lighting. It actually, from the angles, it doesn't really go over Belthwaite. It goes down the road and it goes down towards the lake. So these aren't lights that are shining directly over the other properties. I think that's it. Otherwise, any questions?
Thank you very much. Is there any questions, members? Chris.
Thank you, sir. I just wonder if you'd like to comment on the idea that Belthwaite may obviously doesn't like looking up the hill and seeing nothing but Barn How there, but you are going to be a lot closer and overviewing Belthwaite. Is that going to comment on that?
Well, the house has always been there. The house has actually gone down rather than up. When we knocked down the original house,
area.
The parking area. It's slightly above Belthwaite, but I mean, as Mrs. Campbell suggested, there are several levels here. So and there are levels all over the place up the road. We're on all the houses on different slopes. So and we're not largely above them. I'd say the impact of the house is going to be mitigated by the cladding. So we've got extensive planting going in, which will also soften the look. The garage looks a lot better than it has done for the last 40 years with the new less stone facing, which is far less imposing than the white door and white pebble dash on the front that we had before. So I mean, we're not going to be choosing to stand and look at Belthwaite.
Any more questions? No? Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Harman. Could I ask you to try and see, could you switch the microphone off just as you go? Brilliant, thank you. Okay, members, into our discussion part. Am I choosing or am I getting a volunteer? Chris?
At the start of this meeting, a while ago, we're going to go on a site visit to Bowness.
Yes.
I would have thought we could slip down at Smithy Lane and have a look at this while we're there.
If you're saying that you need a site visit in order to make a decision, you could, in theory, we could make a deferral and hold a site visit. It's slightly later than we would normally do it, but
consider that possibility.
yeah, well, we could ask other members if they feel that way. Anyone else want to get into our discussion on this one? Jim?
Thank you, Mark. And I think this is in the conservation area as well, isn't it? Is it on the edge of the
It's on the edge, it's not within, it's on the edge.
It's on the edge of the new conservation area. Not a great fan of covering a little bit more of the land over, but I looked at it closely. I don't think it makes a huge difference to the previous proposal. I think the light issue from their car headlights was something that was on my mind, and I think we've dealt with that. Beyond that, it's an area with a lot of large properties on a lot of different levels. They have been there. This isn't something that's new. So with the landscaping, etc., that's there, I would be inclined to say reluctantly, yeah, it looks sensible and it allows access to the house. I think that's another point. We don't often discuss this, but to allow the car up to the house does avoid several sets of stairs, which is, I think, something else that was made in the report and is probably something to be minded on. So on balance, I'm happy, but I wouldn't make that a proposal yet, Mark. I'd like to hear what colleagues have to say.
Okay, thank you. Who's next? Jackie.
I think the only thing for me is that the parking on the top of the garage and the shining headlights into the properties, but it's just how often that's going to happen, because they've got the garage underneath. Surely they'd use the garage more than they would the top parking on the top.
Do you find the potential for that a reason that you would think to refuse?
Not particularly, no. It could be a condition, yes, sorry.
Okay, that would be, we'd have to discuss that. Let's see where we go on this. Who's next? Jenny.
I don't really feel like the lights would actually shine into anybody's property if they were facing out towards Smithy Lane. And also, are the Harmons going to sit there with the lights on when they've parked up, and you know,
Yeah, you'd presume
that
it
was
would be
one
for
thing.
limited.
And then also Belthwaite, are they going to be looking up banks, or are they going to be looking at the view? I know which way I'd be looking.
Okay. Anybody else? Phil?
Yeah, just so I mean, I do often cycle up Smithy Lane, and
You get everywhere, Phil.
it is quite, and there's a collection. You know, there's an awful lot of houses, modern, different styles, different this, different that, and in many respects, this is a new and innovative sort of design, and I appreciate the future, trying to future-proof it, because and as the Windermere Town Council. So I think, you know, we are an ageing population, and we've got to be trying to adapt modern houses to help us live longer and better in houses that we know and love. So from that point of view, I think the design has a lot to commend, and I'd be, were there to be a proposal, I'd be probably happy to second it.
You don't want to propose it? No, Jim hasn't gone that far yet.
In that case, I will propose that we support the officer recommended.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak? Jenny, second. Okay. Further comments? Alternative proposals. So we've got a proposal from Phil, seconded by Jenny, that we grant as per officer's report. All those in favour? So we're unanimous on that one?
That's unanimously approved.
Okay, thank you very much, members. So we have 2 more applications to go. Neither have public speaking. So our next one is number 6 on the schedule. We're going to Lakeside, the YMCA, and Kelsey's been waiting patiently to do the last one for her.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is an application for the construction of a concrete slipway at Lakeside YMCA. The application is before committee as the recommendation to approve is contrary to the objections of Colton Parish Council. I've got one quick update for members. Since the publishing of the report, the agent has provided an additional response from the ecologist, particularly in response to the Colton Parish Council's objections. This response just confirms that spawning fish are not a likely ecological constraint at this location, and it's for those reasons that the impacts on spawning fish weren't identified within the ecological report. So the application site lies on the western shore of Windermere. It's the former YMCA North Camp site, which has since been sold off. So it's just a bit of a view of the site plan. You've got a lot of existing development there at the moment from the previous uses, including a lot of lakeshore development, so several jetties. We've had several applications over the last few years for replacement jetties on the site, and an existing boathouse as well with jetty, and the proposed concrete slipway would lie immediately to the south of the existing boathouse. So just a couple quick photos of the site. This is looking east into Windermere. You've got the existing boathouse on the left, and a floating jetty previously approved to the right, and the concrete slipway would sit right up against the boathouse and extend into the lake. Right-hand photo is just taken from further along that jetty, looking back towards the lake shore. See, there's quite a lot of hard standing there and some development around it. And then this is again same spot, but looking slightly further south at some of the other jetties that are on the site, and then some of the development behind that. And then the proposed plans. So as I say, the concrete slipway lies to the south of the existing boathouse. It's 25 metres long into the lake, 6 metre width, but as the sections at the bottom show, the majority of the slipway is underwater, depending on lake levels. So the proposals are considered to be of an appropriate design and scale, particularly given the lakeshore, existing lakeshore development and the context of the site. Concerns relating to spawning fish that have been raised by Colton Parish Council have been addressed by the ecologist's additional response, but are also considered to be mitigated by the construction method statement, which has been conditioned. So the application is recommended for approval with conditions.
Thank you, Kelsey. Questions? Kelsey, I don't suppose Colton Parish Council have come back or had the chance to come back about the report, or you haven't heard?
We received a response after the report had been published, and it sort of reiterated what was already in the report.
They kept.
We've not had any additional response from Colton Parish Council, no.
Sorry, you received a response by Colton?
We've not received any.
No, he's not had anything since the initial response. Okay, right, fine. Okay, Jim.
A quick question. It seemed to extend quite a long way into the lake. Does the water shelve quite slowly there or something? It seemed quite a big jetty. I'm assuming they wouldn't build more than they needed to anyway, but a lot of slipways I've used are relatively short. That seemed quite a long slipway for some reason.
I'm not entirely sure on the proposed length. We consider the length to be acceptable, partly because of how little of it would be visible, but also given the lengths of the neighbouring jetties, and it didn't have any identified impacts on lakebed either. So the proposed seemed acceptable.
Thank you.
Doug.
Thank you for the report. I suppose for clarity and making sure I haven't missed anything, what would be a reason for refusing this? Not necessarily this, but just generally, including things such as, and I'm not looking for it, please don't anyone suggest that, including incremental use or sorry, incremental development of the lake boundary.
Landscape effects, visual effects, individual and cumulative, ecological impacts, individual and cumulative.
Lovely. In other words, I'm fine. I haven't missed anything. Thank you.
I like the word cumulative. So we don't have any public speaking for this, so straight into it. Anyone find any issues with it? No? Anyone want to kick us off with something, or does anyone want to dive into a proposal? Dive in, slip in. Rick.
I don't know a lot about lakes and boats. It's next to an existing boathouse. It's between boathouses. Where else would you expect to see a slipway? I'll stick my neck out and recommend approval.
Doug?
I'd second that, please.
Okay. Anyone else against or other comments? No. Okay. Proposal and seconded. You got them down by Doug. All in favour?
That's unanimously approved.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Oh, before Kelsey goes, because she will be able to answer this. Tomorrow, Doug and myself will be at the Lake Administration Committee for Westmoreland and Furness. Why I would have thought this was I thought Westmoreland and Furness owned the bed of the lake, and I would have thought that this is an incursion onto the bed.
It's not in the area though. You might be the owners, but the planning authority is National Park.
But we are okay. But we're looking at tomorrow. We're looking at a floating jetty at Stores,
which you'll have to apply for permission for.
Well, no. I think we're sort of giving it approval. So Westmoreland and Furness are not the planning authority.
Not for the lake. No.
Even though the bed, Westmoreland and Furness own the bed, are responsible.
Yeah, yeah. So it's National Park for planning within this area.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you.
Right. So next one, our last one of the day, we're going to Staveley. Abigail is going to talk to us about driveways.
Thank you, Chair. This application is being presented before committee today because the recommendation of approval is contrary to the Parish Council's objection. There it is. This application proposes to vary condition 2 on a previously approved application at the Poplars in Staveley. The site is in the centre of Staveley. The front of the site faces onto the banks to the north, and then the rear of the site is accessed via Fairfield Close. And the proposed works relate to the driveway at the rear of the site. So these are the plans for the previously approved application, which involved the removal of the existing driveway and the creation of a new gravel driveway to the side. This application is simply to change the use of the material of the driveway from the previously approved gravel to concrete. This is the photo of the rear of the site, where you can see the existing access and driveway. So the previously approved access will be where that wall currently is. The wall will be removed, and the now concrete driveway will be behind it. These photos just show some of the surrounding properties at the site, just to show the variety in the materials and hard surfaces that have been used. In summary, I consider the main issues to be the impact of the development on the character and appearance of the area and flood risk. In terms of character and appearance, I'm satisfied that the use of concrete would be small scale and wouldn't detract from the character of the area. In terms of flood risk, given that the site is not in a flood risk zone, the lead local flood authority have no objection, and there would remain a large area of permeable surfacing in the garden. I'm satisfied that a small concrete driveway will not lead to an increased flood risk. So overall, I recommend the application be approved, subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Thank you, Abigail. Any questions for Abigail first? Rick?
What needs permission?
This application, we considered that the change from gravel to concrete would be classed as a minor material amendment, which is why a new application was needed.
Why did the original application need permission?
It's highly likely that the original proposals were permitted development. They applied, we approved it. They're applying for an amendment to that permission. It's highly likely that these proposals are permitted development as well, but we've got an application and we're approving it or recommending approval.
Yeah, so, yeah. I presume policy isn't to refuse a planning application saying you could get permitted development instead. We just process the applications. But it's before us, so they've got permission for a gravel driveway. Before us, is it acceptable to turn it into a concrete driveway? Now I know there's like local rights of access disputes going here among neighbours. However, they're not really relevant to this planning application. This is simply for us to think gravel versus concrete. Jenny.
Around there. So
Yeah, there's a sort of mix. It's called tarmac and all that. Yeah, Peter.
I'd like to move that we approve the application following our officer's recommendation.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'd second that.
Anything else after that? No. Okay, you got Peter propose, Jackie second. All those in favour? All those, yeah. Are you in favour? We'll take that as an in favour.
If I'm in favour, right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's unanimously approved.
Okay. Right. Yeah, well, the council believed it wasn't in keeping. They felt the gravel was more in keeping with concrete. I don't make comments on planning applications at Lancashire Council. Yeah, they haven't. I think they think it's just small. I mean, it's quite a lot of tarmac and drains around there. Yeah. Okay, so into the rest of the agenda, we have got planning applications, the delegated ones. Any comments or questions about those? Compliance matters, all the enforcement stuff. Response to neighbouring authorities. Appeals lodged. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, oh yeah, no, that's what we're on to now. So appeals decided.
I would just like to comment on the Nether Wasdale Lowood Cottage. Not many members on this committee. Some of us were on the committee at that discussion, and it was a very long and lengthy and detailed discussion, and was very focused on the detail of the legislation and planning guidance. And I would just like to comment that it was gratifying to see the inspector agreeing with everything that officers said to us in the meeting and that we discussed and we decided and we agreed. So it was just a sort of a pat on our back and officers' back, if I may. This was a really difficult one.
Yeah, ancient semi-natural woodland is very protected, it seems. Yeah. So yeah, there's a couple of there that went against the authority. The one at Keswick. Yeah, okay. And there are a couple of tree preservation orders made to note. The one at Dove Crag and Windermere, Sheepdog Field at Keswick, and Copper Beech Tree at Storrs Park. And that's it. We'll switch the recording off. The only thing we've got to do is try and figure out a site visit, a suitable date for going to Bowness. Does anyone want to propose a date? Should we go for July?